When I got the call that my best friend had been killed in a car accident, I stopped being myself. That night, I didn't even know what to feel. Alex, my friend, the one who helped me through so much, was never going to walk through my front door again and insult me over something ridiculous just to make me laugh. When his sister told me the news over the phone, I didn't know what to say. I just sat there in silence. The next few days blurred into each other. I was inconsolable. I shut myself in and refused to talk to anyone. When people did manage to get through, I'd just nod along as they spoke, hoping they'd take the hint and leave. Eventually they would, but the quiet they left behind didn't come close to the silence left by him. I couldn't bring myself to go to the funeral. The memory of the phone call was too fresh. Even though Wendy, his sister, had called me days ago, it still felt like it had only just happened. Time wasn't moving properly, not for me. I just didn't want to see him like that. I didn't want my last memory of him to be so still, so empty of the life he'd always carried. So I stayed in my room and wished the world would just forget I existed. The thought of that numbness taking my pain away again. Eventually, I had to start moving forward. A week after he passed, I made a conscious effort to seek people out. I knew that if I stayed in that pit much longer, I'd rot. Alex would have told me something stupid and positive to lift me up. That was his way. Once during one of my darker episodes, he walked into my room and just stared at me with this soft, caring look. "Are you sad?" he asked, completely serious. He knew the answer. Then he grabbed a sheet from nearby, draped it around the back of my neck like a cape, and grinned. "Well, now you're super sad." He always knew how to make me smile. I gave his mom a call, just to reach out, see how she was holding up. Margaret was always lovely to me. "Hello," she said. "Hi, Margaret, how are you holding up?" She sighed. "Well, you know how these things are, Dan." "Yeah, I bet." I paused. "Hey, would you want to go out for lunch or something, catch up?" "Well, as luck would have it, we're having a family get-together in about half an hour if you'd like to come over." The cheer in her voice was chilling. "Yeah, sounds good. At your place." "Of course, see you soon." I hesitated. "Sure, see you soon." I hung up and sat there for a moment, an uneasy feeling growing in my stomach. Something about her tone didn't sit right. I couldn't stop myself from analyzing it. Every inflection, the pitch, the strange brightness in her phrasing. I told myself I was just overthinking it. I hadn't spoken to anyone properly in days. My brain was probably just latching onto something for stimulation. Still, the feeling didn't go away as I made the slow, dragging journey from my dark, unkempt room to the car, and out into the blinding light of the outside world. As I pulled up out front of Margaret's house, I found myself wondering, was this the wake? Had the funeral just happened? It felt intrusive to an event I'd been invited to, like stepping into a memory that had moved on without me. The house looked the same, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't wanted anymore, as if the place itself had turned against me, built to keep me out. The cars out front were lined up like a wall of steel, barring my way. The sounds that emanated from the house as I reached the door felt like a force pushing me to leave, a celebration of a life without me. I winced at the thought. There I was again, making it all about me, twisting grief into something selfish. I reminded myself why I was here, to remember him. I approached the house with clearer thoughts, trying to latch onto something else. The sounds of laughter and conversation were unmistakable. Cheer, it felt wrong. The happy music playing made me feel even more out of place as I knocked on the door. Margaret answered. Dan, come on in, she said, hugging me tight. You look as bright as ever. I knew that was a lie. She knew too well how I felt and how it showed. I offered a polite nod and stepped inside, catching sight of my arms, pale under the light. My clothes were dark and unwashed, hanging off me like they didn't belong. My hair and beard had grown wild, spiraling out in every direction. I was the definition of a mess. But Margaret smiled nonetheless. We made our way into the kitchen and I nodded to Alex's family. His father, Nick, and his sister, Wendy, were sitting at the bench laughing over a private joke. They glanced at me and laughed again. Soon others joined, uncles, aunts, grandparents, as if they'd been manifested from different rooms, all converging on the kitchen, summoned by the promise of a hot meal. Margaret gave me a side hug. For those who don't know, this is Daniel, Alex's friend. They smiled politely at the proclamation but quickly returned to what they were doing. Everything felt off. It was like I'd slipped back into one of my benders from before. Faces felt vaguely accusatory. Eyes seemed to burn with judgment. Their bodies betrayed something deeper, like they were all putting on a performance, hiding what they really felt beneath practiced smiles. It felt like everything had suddenly turned against me. I kept catching snatches of conversation that dropped in tone when my name was mentioned, as if my presence was dragging everything down. I shook myself, trying to snap out of it. My thoughts were spiraling again, turning every glance, every whisper into something about me. It was always the same, this creeping paranoia that I was being judged, that I was somehow ruining things just by being there. I knew it wasn't real. I always made it about myself, but knowing that didn't make the feeling go away. I turned to Wendy, who had made her way from the bench to the grazing table. I needed to talk to someone to anchor myself. I took her in for a moment, and that old crush resurfaced, softening the sharp edges of the moment. "Hey, Wendy," I said with a smile, trying to convince myself I was still someone worth talking to. She smiled back. "That was embarrassing of Mom. Can't believe she did that in front of everyone." "Wendy, I just wanted to say, I know what it's like." She looked at me with a puzzled expression. "What?" Her phone rang before I could answer. She picked it up immediately, cutting off my apology before it even reached my lips. "Yeah, just walk in, dummy." She laughed into the phone. She hung up and turned to me again. "What were you saying?" But I had a different question. "Who was that?" She smiled. "Alex, of course." I was disgusted. I stared at her. "That's not funny." My accusatory tone caught her off guard. She frowned and shrugged. "It wasn't meant to be." Before I could respond, before I could ask her what kind of joke that was, a figure stepped into the room. I froze. A corpse walked into the room. Its clothes were torn, soaked with dried blood. Skin hung in sallow gray folds, stretched over exposed ligaments and red decaying muscle that pulsed with unnatural life. The neck was open, the entire side peeled away to reveal the esophagus and spine, raw and glistening in the kitchen light. The smell hit me like a wave, thick, putrid, and wrong. It doubled my revulsion, twisting my stomach as my brain rejected the thing standing before me. The stench was fetid, rancid, so foul it made my eyes water, as if my body was trying to protect me from the sight. It all crescendoed in his face, its skull partially crushed, hair burnt away in patches. One eye was milky white with death's touch, and yet it smiled. A smile I recognized. The guest turned and greeted Alex with the warmest of welcomes. Hugs were exchanged, leaving flakes of flesh on their too clean clothes. A cousin or two gave light jabs at his exposed ribs, laughing as if it was all part of some inside joke. Alex's walk was stiff and awkward. His entire left leg seemed shattered, unable to bear his weight. Yet no one offered him help. No one noticed any of it. No one saw that Alex was dead. He stood by the table, casually picking up a piece of cheese and a biscuit. Parts of his hand were stripped of flesh, exposing charred bone beneath. He looked at me, his dead eye fixed and clouded. "What's wrong, Dan?" he asked, his voice calm. He chewed slowly. The biscuit ground noisily in his exposed mouth, crumbs and spittle leaking from a peeling flap of cheek. Then he swallowed, his throat twitching as it clenched and relaxed, forcing the food down through whatever remained of his insides. I saw it all, a thing we're not meant to see. I didn't respond, I couldn't. My silence was answer enough. Everyone turned to me, not to the reanimated corpse of their son, their brother, their nephew. Why were they looking at me? I slowly raised a trembling finger and pointed at the thing that was supposed to be Alex. His smile widened, revealing missing molars and a blackened, half-melted tongue. I stammered, "You're dead." "What did you say?" Wendy snapped. "Is that a threat?" Alex's dad barked. "If that was meant to be a joke, it's not funny, Dan," Margaret shouted. Within seconds, the whole family was on me, yelling, swearing, calling me a freak, a junkie. But I couldn't take my eyes off him. I stared past them all, past the shouting, the outrage, and locked eyes with the corpse behind them. Alex stared back, grinning through rotten teeth. And he was laughing. I left the party. Their voices followed me, screaming, yelling, accusing. But all of it felt distant, muffled beneath the weight of what I'd just seen. I couldn't bear it. I staggered out to my car in a daze, telling myself it wasn't real. I was dreaming, crashing out again. I don't remember taking anything. No pills, no drink, no needles. I slammed the car door shut and slumped into the seat. My hands shook as I checked my arms for marks. Nothing. No new bruises, no punctures. I held my head in my hands, rocking slightly as the whisper came out of me again and again. "Not again. I haven't relapsed. Not again." I sat in the driver's seat, breathing too fast. My fingers curled tight around the wheel. I hadn't even started the car. The silence was unbearable. I reached for the stereo and turned it on. I just needed something to fill the space inside my head. But what came through the speakers wasn't music. It was a voice. "Hey, just checking in. You doing all right? I know it gets rough sometimes. You've just got to push through, yeah." It was Alex. "Don't do anything stupid, you're stronger than that." Click then static. The radio hummed blank and empty, like it had never happened. But I knew that message. I remembered it. Years ago, when I was at my worst, Alex had left it on my voicemail. I'd listened to it a dozen times before deleting it. I looked down at the dash. My car didn't even have Bluetooth. How the hell did my phone play through the radio? The message burned into my skull. I did delete it. It was gone. I looked to my phone, almost begging it to contradict me. I reached to confirm it, but stopped. Instead, I looked up. The rearview mirror. Someone was sitting in the back seat. It was me. Same clothes, same hair, blood trailing down the side of his temple. He stared at me, frozen, pale, eyes wide like he'd just seen something he couldn't explain. I blinked. Gone. Just the empty seat. No one there. I gripped the wheel tighter. The pressure in my chest was unbearable now, like time itself was folding in on me, like I was caught in something I couldn't understand. Something was pulling at the edges of the moment, something waiting. I had to go home. I needed something normal to ground me. I slammed the front door behind me and locked it. The sound of the bolt sliding home echoed through the house like it didn't belong here, like I didn't belong here. I stood in the entryway, fists clenched, body shaking. I screamed as the feeling rose up through me, crashing against my ribs. My skin prickled. My chest buzzed like electricity was humming through my bones. Something inside me wanted out. It writhed low in my gut. My horror had turned physical, like my own skeleton was trying to split me open and escape. The panic didn't settle, it bloomed. I tried to talk myself down, breathe, focus. I thought back to the party. It had to be a hallucination, it had to be. None of it made sense. Alex was alive. I saw him. I heard him. He spoke to me, ate food, laughed, smiled. But something in me recoiled at the thought. That wasn't him. It couldn't have been, because Wendy called me. She told me days ago. Alex was dead. He died in a car accident. I remembered the moment, the silence, and the disbelief. So why had I seen him? Why was he there? I stumbled to the bathroom, flicking the light on. Too bright. I tore open the cabinet, knocking over old pill bottles, half-used tubes, blister packs long out of date. I searched for anything to help. But I knew there was nothing. There hadn't been for months. I stared at the empty shelves like they were supposed to explain something. Like they should have told me what was real. I closed the cabinet and looked into the mirror. My reflection stared back from it, pale, wild-eyed. I didn't recognize him. I leaned in. For a moment, I swore it wasn't me. Then I blinked, and it was gone. Just the panic and the breath catching in my throat. I stumbled down the hallway and into my room. I felt like I'd been gone for years. The dark was waiting, familiar, patient. It welcomed me like it always had. My sanctuary, my pit, the only place where the outside world couldn't reach me. I collapsed onto the bed, curling in on myself like I could hide from the memories, clawing at the edge of my thoughts. Like I could somehow forget what I saw. But I couldn't forget the smell of him. The rot, the voice, the smile. The rain started tapping against the roof, a sound I normally loved. On better nights, I'd let it lull me to sleep, gentle and steady like the world was breathing around me. But tonight, it sounded like hammers. Each drop landed heavy, tearing through the roof in my mind, trying to break in. Like something was outside, pressing in, hunting, waiting. Something wanted in, something wanted me. I couldn't let it take me, whatever it was. So I left. I made the choice to move, to keep moving. Staying still was giving in, letting it win. If I stayed in that house another second, I'd let it in. I grabbed my keys with shaking hands and stepped outside into the storm. The rain had picked up, thick, blinding sheets of it now pounding the windscreen before I even sat down. Visibility was awful, but I didn't care. I drove, out into the streets, out into the storm, hoping that motion alone could break the spiral in my head. The rain came down like nails, and the wipers couldn't keep up. Each slap of rubber against glass just smeared my vision further. Streetlights blurred into pale smudges. The world was reduced to shadows and high beams. My mind still screamed, echoing with the image of his face, his rotting face, that smile. Then my phone rang. Alex. His name lit the screen like it shouldn't be there. I answered with trembling fingers, pressed it to my ear. My other hand clutched the wheel too tight. The tires hissed beneath me. His voice came through, shaky but trying to sound calm. Dan, are you all good? I almost laughed, a broken, bitter thing. The hell do you mean? I'm hallucinating. What are you seeing? No, not just seeing, hearing. All right, okay, what are you hearing? Walk me through it, you've got this. He sounded just like he used to when I spiraled. Calm, present, reassuring. For a moment I wanted to believe it. That he was still alive, that this could make sense. It's you, I whimpered. What? It's you, Alex. You're what I've been seeing. I don't know what that means. Dan, listen to me. Wendy and I are on our way to your place right now. Just stay home, all right? Don't leave. Like hell I will, Alex. I could barely see the road now, rain smearing everything into movement and light. I blinked away tears blurred against the storm. The world streaked past in a howl. You're dead! I screamed before I hung up. Suddenly there were headlights. Too close and too fast. A white flash. Metal folding. Glass exploding inward like shrapnel. The world spun, time snapped. Silence. The sound of the crash hadn't stopped ringing in my ears, but the world had gone quiet. The rain began to pick up in my ear as it tapped on the ruined hulk of my car. I blinked through the blood, through the glass. My hands were still clutched tight to the wheel. Then, my phone rang. The screen was cracked, flickering. Wendy. I answered. Dan. My voice caught. Wendy. We've been in an accident. Alex is... Her heavy sobs followed. I looked up in silence, not knowing what to say. Through the fractured windscreen, I saw her. She sat in the passenger seat of the car I'd hit, phone pressed to her ear, sobbing. Next to her, Alex, motionless, slumped behind the wheel. Alex was dead.